Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Something Something podcast. My name is Eric Kasloff, and with me, as always, is Larry Sands. How's it going, Larry?
Man, everything is going great. Everything actually is going great. And before we get into our guest for this episode, which he's a repeat offender, I do have to
A
say, Eric,
multiple time offender.
multiple, yeah, I know, which is very cool. But just a little update. I am in the midst of editing, sound design, sound, all that stuff with Hillsborough Road. Um, and it kind of is good because we're kind of like not at the end of the road, but right in the middle of the road, right?
For me, it's weird because I spent, years writing the script and then the time editing it. I kind of miss it in some ways, but then I don't miss the panic attacks
Right.
from doing it at all.
Right. Right. It's the romanticism of all of it. And then you begin to realize what that brought you to, almost having a mental breakdown, and
And
then you're
this
like, I'm
is
good.
the month that we made it, April.
Yeah, it very much is, very much is. So
So
I'm super overwhelmed, but completely excited at the same time. So yeah.
So I have some health updates. As everybody knows, at the start of the year, I wasn't, and I'm going to tie this into our guest also because it involves movies that I was afraid of missing.
Hmm.
As everyone knows, at the start of the year, I spent almost a month at NYU Medical at
Hmm.
Langone, which, my dream was to go to NYU, but not that way. As I was there, I talked about losing my dentures because I wear partials, and
Yeah.
it's looking like I might be able to get my new ones all set for $50 a month,
Nice.
which is helping me because my self-esteem has been down.
Yeah.
Now, while I was in the hospital, my two biggest fears were, oh my God, I'm gonna have to watch the Super Bowl in the hospital. And there's a bunch of movies I'm gonna miss in theater. And one of those movies is from my favorite streaming service, and that is, of course, Shudder. And the
Yes.
movie was Late Night with the Devil, which is, man, so far the best horror movie I've seen all year, Larry. It
That
hits it
says a
out
lot
of the
because you watch a
park.
lot of horror films.
The bulk of what I watch. And Larry, introduce our guest for us.
Yes, absolutely. My gosh, what can I say about Sam Zimmerman except he really is an encyclopedia of horror, everything horror, all things related to horror, and especially um Shudder. And 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 now it's also, if correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, it's AMC Plus as well, correct?
I believe so, but I
Yeah.
mainly watch it on the Shutter app.
Yeah. And um uh, Sam, welcome to the show again.
Thank you for having me back.
You're
Yes, and so
welcome.
Shutter is standalone, and then if you have AMC Plus, we also have Shutter. We are fully bundled.
Wow.
Hi, that's my son in the background, little guy.
I love it.
He's not happy to be confined at the moment.
I That's hilarious. It sounds so funny, but as a parent, you understand that when you have to do something special like talk on the phone or on Zoom or anything where other people are listening, and you have to try to keep your child from just doing anything that they normally do. It's always one of those things.
He's a new walker, so he especially is
Oh,
is
okay.
rambunctious as
Oh,
like
wow.
he'll find his way into anything and
That's
everything. And
so awesome.
98% of the time it's hilarious and adorable and very encouraging. And then
Uh,
every
That's
once in a while you're like,
beautiful, man.
I gotta put a little leash on this.
that's right. That sounds bad, but people that don't have kids don't understand that you have to have, one of those little backpack monkey leashes, right? So they don't go anywhere, especially new walkers. So it's very funny. But thank you for taking the time, Sam. Thank you so much.
Of course, I'm always happy to return and hear what you guys are into, what you've been watching, and whatever I can tell you. And while while that was an incredibly kind introduction, I would say I'm more an encyclopedia of everything I like. Like I know how much I don't know, and I always
Ah.
appreciate when someone calls me an expert or an aficionado. But I am keenly aware of everything I haven't seen to feel fully imbued with that description.
Wow, man. Spoken like a true that's a truth bomb because most people will be like, no, I can talk about anything, and then you talk about anything, and they're like, oh no,
What?
I don't know about that. But that's very cool. That's very cool. And I know when because Eric obviously he loves horror films, and when he says he's watched a horror film that has really it's like the best he's ever seen for this year, he actually means it because he is a crazy horror film guy. So talk to us because I know you just did like a special halfway to Halloween that you had. And obviously, it started what at the beginning of April, I believe.
Yeah, I think this is a few years in the running now, where Shudder has planted a flag on April as halfway to Halloween, and really the whole idea is very simple. It's just how can we capture that Halloween feeling in April, halfway through the year? There's really no reason to celebrate Halloween once a year, and we just take that as a programming challenge to bring films to the service that we love and feel are imbued with that kind of sense of the season, whether it's darkness or terror or mischief or like a really grim sense of fun. And this year, I'm really thrilled. Like this year, I feel like we really nailed it because not only is Late Night with the Devil sort of the anchor
So
to this
good,
programming and
man.
takes place on Halloween, but we were also able to pair it with a film I'm always trying to bring back to Shudder. We've had it once before, but another film that takes place on Halloween that is a perfect double feature with Late Night with the Devil called Ghost Watch from the BBC from 1992.
Yeah.
Wow.
Um, we've had Baghead, which is like a really great,
Awesome movie.
jump scare sort of turn out the lights, classical Friday night horror film. We're premiering Infested, which is kind of the platonic ideal of creepy crawly, but is also thoughtful and terrific and stylish and scary. Yes, yes, and we also at the beginning of the month premiered the streaming premiere of Mute Witness, which has never been on streaming before, one of the great 90s
Wow.
thrillers. So I feel like the programming is coming together in a really special way this month. I'm ecstatic.
That's
One
very
thing I
cool.
want to add is I'm to the point now when I'll see a movie, like whether it be a festival screener or something like that, and my first thought is that's a Shudder movie. And it happened perfect. I think it got added this month. Two movies that scream Shudder and in a way AMC Fear Fest, and that is the third Saturday in October, part one and part four. You're wondering where's two and three? They don't exist.
Oh yeah, I mean Jay Burleson, who made those films. I mean, it was so resourceful and such like a great sort of symbol of independent horror filmmaking right now, and kind of if you know and love the genre, the idea that you know and love the first film, and then there are sequels people loved, and he went to try and craft a slasher out of time, a killer movie out of time, very influenced by the feeling of Halloween. And then what does that 90s sequel look like? It was almost like, I love The Strangers, and I also love the second Strangers film, because to me the second Strangers film feels like what would have been the fourth or fifth, right? Like,
I
you
like
know
it
what it is.
better
It's
than the original.
I unfortunately can't go that far with you.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But I think he really nailed it with Third Saturday. They're such special, fun, interesting indie horror films.
Yeah, and if you're all wondering, their whole thing, I think the meta joke is so many people would see the sequel on Fear Fest before the original. Like there's generations of people who saw Halloween Part 4 before they saw the original Halloween, or we can go on through the whole list. Like they
Oh,
saw
my
Jason
first
Lives.
my first Friday the 13th was New Blood with the telekinetic girl.
Really?
That was the first one I
Mm,
ever saw. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
mm.
I
I think
love
so. I
New
think so
Blood.
many people experience those movies like that, and I would be curious for people to watch Third Saturday Part 5 and then go back and watch, what was meant to be the original. I think it's a really fun pairing.
It's always interesting because when you do look at like genre films, much like horror, is it a true statement? And this is for you, Sam, and for you, Eric, as well. Because as an outsider looking in, as the occasional horror fan that, really comes along in October. Really, it starts in maybe late August now as a spooky season, right? But
Yeah.
but as a casual observer, listening to you say that you can actually look at a series like Halloween or Friday the 13th and look at the end and then go, wow, that was cool. I want to go back to the catalog. And I think it's so interesting because is it true that when you have something as iconic as that, you keep in that same vein and you don't veer off where where if I were to watch, something in a series, the first one I go, "Oh man, that was badass." And then we go back and then I go back, I go, "Oh, that wasn't as good as the one I just watched." Is it true that because I guess I'm looking more as like a filmmaker now, right? Or a creative in that how important is it to stay within that idea or principle that made the these iconic films great in the first place? How important is it to stay true to that, but in a new way? Does
In
that
my
make sense?
opinion, it does, but in my opinion, not important at all because the nature of what's made so many of these series iconic are the departures that the sequels took, right? Like,
Hmm.
you know, Jason's not the killer in the first Friday the 13th. That's maybe the most obvious surface value one. And then his hockey mask doesn't come in till part three. And then most people, most fans of the franchise would cite part four as their favorite, as the sort of essential idea of what a Friday the 13th part movie is. Part
Wow.
movie is. My favorite is Friday the 13th part two for my own reasons, right? Or
Oh wow.
you look at Halloween, and I mean, that just goes in a million different directions. And each one has their own sensibility that gives fans their own personal attachments. I think Elm Street's the same way. As many people love Dream Warriors as much as they love the original, as much as they love New Nightmare, as much as they love Dream Master. I mean, I think so many times these departures create these iconic moments and these significant moments that then become our cultural canon of these
Mhm.
movies. Um, so I think if you're out there saying, "Hey, we're returning to the spirit of the original," and you don't, then it's an important departure, and you kind of mess that up. But I think it's always nice for the sequels to have their own flavor because that's what gets them their own fans.
Wow. Wow.
Exactly. Like
Interesting.
when we had our other spin-off podcast called Smells Like Teen Horror, our favorite episode was Jason Lives versus Dream Warriors. Because when you ask horror, genre fans, those are the two when it comes to sequels that are always mentioned as, a lot of people like Dream Warriors more than the first Nightmare or
Mm.
Jason Lives more than the original Friday. Like me, I don't like the first Friday the 13th. I'll say that right now. It's important, but come on, if I'm gonna watch a Friday movie, the first one isn't the one I'm going to.
Totally, and that also, but that what that's interesting is that allows space for you to return to it in another number of years and then go like, oh, is there something here that I didn't appreciate
Yeah.
before? Because that's the other fun thing about all of these different movies in a series is, does your ranking or your own personal favorites change over time? How does a movie play at one age versus another? This isn't part of a series, but one of my recent favorite movie going experiences was over the sort of significant portion of the pandemic. They did a pop-up drive-in New York City and Queens, and they played Videodrome. And I hadn't seen Videodrome since I was
Wow.
in my teen years. And I remember seeing Videodrome then and thinking it was like gnarly, of course, thinking it was really cool, but completely went over my head. And so I never returned to it that much. And I think, if you asked me what my favorite Cronenberg was at the time, I would, cite like The Fly or something a little bit more standard or accessible. And then seeing Videodrome older, it very quickly became my favorite Cronenberg. It played completely anew to me. I understood it in a completely different manner. And I think that could probably happen with even something as silly as like a slasher movie. You might return to it and see something completely different in it that you didn't admire before.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
happened with me with the original It trilogy. When I was younger, I liked the first half with the kids, but then I hit my 30s and I was like, you know what? I relate so much more to the adults now
Yeah.
in this story, and it completely blew my mind. All right, we need to talk more about Late Night with the Devil because
Yes.
what to me, what and also, the Exorcism with Russell Crowe, which you're partnering with Miramax. The trailer dropped a couple
Yes.
hours ago, and that looks amazing. And this is a two-part question. With the success of Shimmermarink in theaters and the juggernaut that is Late Night with the Devil, is theatrical a thing you guys are looking more towards right now?
Yes, when it makes sense for the film, right? Our goal always is to best serve the film and best serve the audience discovering the film. And so when we see potential in a film like Late Night, we will partner with our siblings at IFC Films or RLJE. In the case of The Exorcism, it's with Vertical, who's releasing it, and we're thrilled to be working with them. But absolutely, the thing about Shudder is we've always wanted to be nimble, and we love horror and we love the many different experiences of horror because we're so keenly aware of the many different experiences of horror. I had just as many formative experiences seeing a horror film in theaters as I did renting it on video, as I did, frankly, seeking it out online when it wasn't available in the US ever. So I think streaming and theatrical and VOD and physical, they're all really significant and viable forms of loving the genre. And that's why we don't restrict ourselves to just streaming. That's our home base. Shudder is a streaming service, and Shudder is a place where we can curate and celebrate the genre. But if a film can really make waves in theaters and have momentum, we don't want to hold that back.
That's very cool. Um, uh, what is it like for you when it comes? I mean, obviously, you deal with a lot of films and filmmakers and horror films, obviously, and that takes on a whole. What, man, how do you decide? How do you decide what to put on? Like during Halloween, like the Halloween season, like the proper Halloween, because I think you guys add stuff all the time for Shudder. But what is it like for you when you know that you have like a special event, like like Halloween and the months that lead up to that, and then the halfway to Halloween, the months that 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 go into preparing that. What is that like for you and your thought process when it comes to picking films and putting them in there?
So there, in my mind, there absolutely is a difference between what we're programming in September, October, in halfway to Halloween versus the rest of the year. And mostly what I mean by that is that there is, in my mind, a very specific feeling on a Friday night in October that you want.
Yeah.
It is it is mischievous and it's fun and it's
Yes.
scary and it's dark.
Yes.
And there are movies that are playing with the corners of the genre, what the genre can do, what the genre can mean artistically in its form. Some of those movies might not even be interested in being scary necessarily, but they are horror films and they are, doing something different. But for me, October is sacred. It is, you know, if I shut the lights off and light a candle, will this movie play to that environment specifically, right? Will that movie play to the Halloween lights that are around my house, to the hanging ghosts? So in when it comes to that season, and in especially what we try to kind of evoke in April is it scary? Is it fun? Is it creepy? Is it going to put like a really dark smile on your face? Is it going to make you jump out of your skin, but then make you smile? And I
Right.
think Late Night with the Devil is really perfect at that. I think Baghead is really perfect at that. And I think Infested, that's what we're trying to cultivate. And, you've seen movies in years past that we've put out in October, like the VHS films or Deadstream specifically. Like Deadstream to me is a horror comedy that's so rare. It's as scary as it is funny. It's perfect in that sense. So there's definitely a feeling that we try to recall, try to summon, if you will, in October and September.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because when you start talking about like that late night feeling, it made me definitely think about sitting there. And even back, like growing up, like going to the video store, right? And getting a horror movie and going over to a friend's house and putting it in and just being like, "Oh my God, I can never watch horror films again. I can't go to sleep. This is so weird." But that I think, Sam, is what makes you so amazing is that you put your personal, you put you into everything that you do. And I think it really resonates with the things that you put on Shudder.
We
I
we
mean,
all do. I mean, we're a small, all meaning three or four. We're a very small team, but I think we're all really aware, and hopefully much like filmmakers are, of what gets under our skin
yeah,
and what we love to see in the genre. Because yes, we're a distributor, and yes, things should be successful and commercially viable, but that shouldn't hinder them from being authentic to what we're excited about.
yeah,
We're not cynical in what we choose to work on and choose to release.
yeah.
Um, I think in our minds, it's too much work to be cynical. So, my colleague Emily, who's so instrumental in bringing these films, and my colleague Nick, who's so instrumental in working on our original productions, we all know what we love about the genre, and that's what we want to put forward with the filmmakers we work with and the producers we work with and the companies we work with.
Wow.
That we're very keenly aware. And then when it comes to older films, like I know I mentioned Mute Witness before. When I started at Shudder in 2015, sort of in my mental back pocket, right, was a list of films that I knew had never streamed before. Some of them had barely made it off of VHS or had only been available on very bare bones DVDs. And it's been my sort of personal project of, can we bring some of these to streaming because they deserve to be seen more, and the people who have always heard of them who want to see them deserve to have access
Mm,
to them, right? And that sounds like loftier than I think I'm trying to be. And mostly I just want to curate them and get these films out there. But Mute Witness was at like the very top. Like that, Blood on Satan's Claw, which we've had on Shudder, Possession, which we have on Shudder, The Devils, which we worked with Warner Brothers to bring to Shudder, and it has kind of been on Shudder and on Criterion, and then back and forth. Um, Eyes of Fire, like these movies that I just found so special, and I knew there were people who also found them special, and really wonderful partners and labels like Severin Films and Arrow and Vinegar Syndrome, who work on these great movies and work on the restorations, and then we get to partner with them and bring them to streaming. Um, so some of that is like very personal, right? Like I was never going to give up on streaming Mute Witness. I love that movie, and I think everyone should see it. It's so much fun.
wow, wow. Just to hear you talk and like for all the filmmakers, and you probably hear this a lot, but I mean, you really are a champion just of, you know, of filmmaking, horror filmmaking, and I think it's noble of you to look at what makes you tick and bring that into your workplace because I mean, let's face it, once you get into it and you introduce it to your colleagues, obviously that's going to be a giant thing to bring to the mainstream and all the work that goes into it. You're just absolutely amazing, Sam. Thank you. Thank you. My gosh.
I'll cut this.
Sorry, guys, had to jump up for a second.
Oh, that's okay.
Oh, it's
That's
fine.
okay.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's a very kind assessment. You know, there's always more work to do, right? Like,
Yeah.
I I hope we are champions of the genre, and that's our endeavor and
Mhm.
our mission. And hopefully that comes through in films that can reach the heights of late night, and also bringing films like the Third Saturday movies you mentioned,
Yeah.
or we had a slasher called Death Drop Gorgeous on the service for a while, which was like a really fun mass killer movie set in the world of like the drag and queer scene in Providence, Rhode
Yeah.
Island. And that team is really special. They made that nothing. And like that is what excites me, is like the genre was built on the spirit of independence and making movies outside of a system. And
Mhm.
that doesn't mean the system can't get it right. I would never say that, because I think some of my favorite horror movies are absolutely studio movies, are big, scary movies. But I hold like raw independence and big, scary movies in pretty much equal measure. So we should have all of that on Shudder. And that's our goal. Like, let's continue to do that.
I love it. I love
And
it.
you are getting that. I mean, Drag Me to Hell is now on Shudder, and that's as,
Totally.
big studio as you get. And I love that
I
movie
love that
so
movie.
much. I think that come out as soon as all the Spider-Man were done, or was that between two and three?
Almost positive it was after three.
Yeah.
I think it was 2008 or 2009 or so. I love that movie. It's maybe one, it's probably, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to be like too bold, but like it's up there for me with Raimi, right? Like it's
Oh,
probably like Evil
easily,
Dead
yeah.
2, Evil
Mhm.
Dead, Drag Me to Hell. Like boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
what's so great about that, it could fit in the world of the Evil Dead easily if you make the right argument.
Absolutely. I think like I didn't need another Evil Dead movie after Drag Me to Hell, because it felt like that was the spirit.
Exactly,
And then
yeah.
thankfully we got Evil Dead 2013 and Evil Dead Rise, and we got the series, and they're all really fun and absolutely delightful additions and expansions of kind of what Evil Dead is. So I'm not complaining in any capacity. But Drag Me to Hell really gave me that feeling in a great way.
Yeah, and also now a lot of Ty West catalog I noticed. Like my
Yes,
favorite movie of his will always be The Innkeepers. I think
great movie.
that's one of those perfect. House of the Devil is probably the better movie. I just like The Innkeepers so much more. And to add to what you said, the great thing about horror as a genre is Midsommar can be considered a great classic, but so can Sleepaway Camp 3.
Yeah.
You can't do that with dramas. You can't hold a modern Scorsese film in the same regard as The Room. There's a big difference, in those. But how did Late Night with the Devil come to you guys?
We saw Late Night with the Devil out of South by Southwest last year in 2023, and I think really the whole team was just invigorated by it, and we knew what I love about that film, and I love many things about that film, from its aesthetic and its form to David Dastmalchian's kind of fearless and absolutely wildly layered lead performance. But what I love about the film is it is so genuinely creepy and fun and crowd pleasing, while also being, in my opinion, formally like inventive and formally audacious. It is a unique film. It is both fun and scary, but also not quite like something you've seen before. It is not a traditional haunted house film. It's not just a ghost film. It's doing a lot, and asking a lot of you as a viewer while also being just like a great time. And
Wow.
that's what makes it perfect for Shudder and IFC films, in my opinion. Like, what we want to do and we want to try and do is the entirety of the genre is valid, right? But like, if you're going to make something that is a traditional sort of story, whether it's an exorcism story or a deal with the devil story, what can you do to make it different? And what can you do to make it unique and fun and interesting in a way you haven't seen before? And Late Night just is so special in that regard. I mean, and that performing, you know, David is Jack Dilroy, and frankly, the whole cast is incredible. But I think to do a performance that has to also be aware of so many different styles of performance of
Yes.
late night television and performing as sort of a showman and a host, and then go behind the scenes and have to be kind of a raw, emotional, intimate person, and then in this sort of nightmare trip of the end, it's pretty astounding to me. I love it.
That's
Yeah,
pretty
his
cool.
performances, you feel bad for him, but then in the back of your mind, it's like he did something, didn't he? Something else is there's a guilt, but it's a layered guilt, and again, it's
And
everyone
I mean, you
really.
go back to the Corman Poe Price movies, like all the Vincent Price movies and the Edgar Allan Poe, and it's, you know, there are things that his characters are responsible for, but
Mhm.
you find such a deep well of
Mm.
sadness and empathy and care for him at the same time. It's very, very cool.
That's cool. That's cool. Does it
Yeah.
ever get old? Like, because obviously you watch a lot of stuff, you guys watch a lot of stuff, but does it ever get old? And obviously things still surprise you to have this much energy and passion for the horror genre. You can't say much, you can't say a whole lot of stuff about any other genre than you can horror and the passion that horror films have and horror filmmakers. Um, I mean, what is that? And I know I probably ask you all the time. I'm always in awe of you, Sam, because you have this great thing, man. You have this great opportunity to bring out stuff that you find, stuff that you love and want to bring to people. I just think it's absolutely amazing. But I mean, again, as a creator and being able to talk to you about these things, it brings everything kind of together and we're all living in one space. So I thank you for doing what you do and the
Yeah.
love and the passion that you have for the genre and filmmakers as a whole, because I think you get it. You get what filmmakers, and obviously we're talking indie filmmakers. They go through a lot,
Yeah,
and to be able to have you as their champion is just it warms my heart. It really
that's kind, but like it's exactly like you said. It's an opportunity, right? Like,
yeah, yeah,
I'm so aware of what the opportunity is, and don't want to let that down. We have
yeah.
so many great filmmakers. Like, it's my kind of privilege to work with them and help bring those visions. I think when you guys see In a Violent Nature, which comes out theatrically
Can't
at the end
wait.
of May and then will be on
Wow.
Can't
Shudder
wait.
later this year, it is such a special vision of what a slasher is and can be. And it doesn't do that, frankly, by reconsidering, subverting, parodying in a satirical manner. It is it is a slasher. It is a slasher like you have seen, and it is a slasher like you have never seen simultaneously.
Mm,
Again, when I
It
saw the
is so
trailer
so
for it,
so fucking cool, and
yeah.
that's Chris Nash, and that's Peter Kaplowski, and Shannon Hormer, and Rye Barrett, and like that team. And I'm grateful we knew enough to do it with them, right? Like, that's the cool thing about it.
That's very cool. That's very
again, when
cool.
I saw the trailer for that, I mean, I've heard about it, but seeing it, my jaw was on the floor, and I was like, my God, I can't wait to see this movie because I knew it's gonna be something extremely special.
There is an all-time kill in this film.
That
Ooh,
oh, that's got
ooh,
me going. That's got my
ooh,
mouth watering.
ooh. I love it. I love it.
And this has just been such a great year for horror in general. We've got the cool indie stuff going on, but then I'll admit my personal favorite is always the teenager, the dead teenager movies like with Tarot. That's coming out a day before my
I'm
birthday, and
so excited to see Tarot.
that's
I
my
am so
birthday movie.
excited.
Because
And I'm so
again,
excited that Trevor Henderson designed all the monsters. He's such a great artist.
yes.
He's really cool. I still haven't seen the first Omen, which I'm pretty sad about. I'm going to try and catch up with it.
That's cool.
That and Immaculate I didn't get to see because I was still getting better when they came out, but those are gonna be, really awesome, fun movies. But then again, you have like let's be honest, Tarot is Final Destination. That's the vibe that I've got from it. But then we have In a Violent Nature, which is gonna be so different from anything people seen before. It kind of felt like Talk to Me a little bit when it's like you said, familiar but not familiar.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then, there will be news about this later in the year, but Oddity, it's very special.
Oh, okay,
You
okay.
know,
You got me interested.
Sam, as we begin to wrap up, I want to say that I know halfway to Halloween is happening right now, but as soon as the spooky season starts, we would love to have you come on and give us like a little preview and talk about stuff that's upcoming on Shudder. Um, and I do want to say, we are at the very tail end of April here. But you still have some really cool things going on Shudder for the rest of this month. Um, and I know one of them is like a live, like a watch party.
We're going to try and do much more watch parties. Make sure people are using Shutter TV. We have The Last Drive-In in full effect. It's in season. Joe Bob's hosting a ton of movies this year. We'll be premiering films. We still have Infested to go.
Hmm.
And then we're going to roll right into May too, We're gonna roll in May. We have Stop Motion, which has been incredibly acclaimed. It's a really
Heard so
special film
many
by
good
Robert
things
Morgan.
about it.
And then, continuing on my train of underseen 90s thrillers, there's a Danish film called Night Watch: Demons Are Forever. It's a legacy sequel to a 1994 film called Night Watch, which is one of the best thrillers of the 90s. Scary, fun, deeply tense. It stars Nikolaj Coster-Waldau, which people obviously know as Jamie Lannister on Game of Thrones. He was very
Yes.
young in the 1994 film. He returns for the new film. His young daughter takes the same job as the night watch person at the morgue, and their notorious serial killer returns in a few different forms. It's awesome, and
Can't wait.
we have the original as well. So we bought the original
Wow.
film alongside the sequel, and you'll be able to do a really great double feature in May. So
Wow.
it's halfway to Halloween, but Shudder's business as usual, right?
Yeah,
It's an event, and then we march toward Halloween as well. We're never not in the horror business.
that's right. That's right.
That's
That's right.
great. And
Thank
everybody,
you.
we've been saying as we're about to close up, Shutter is less than $10 a month. I think maybe 60 for the year, give or take. So if you're a horror fan, you need Shutter. And if you know someone who's a horror fan, get them a year subscription because they're gonna thank you for it so much. I mean, Joe Bob enough is worth the price of admission. But also it's just it again, I'm the only person in the world who has Shudder on, and the Hallmark Channel
Right.
streaming service, which
Exactly.
because you need to balance yourself, people, when you watch as much horror as I do. You need that balance.
That's
But
hilarious. That's
again,
hilarious.
Sam, thank you so much for coming on. And everybody, like we say each and every week, remember, support our troops.